continuing the tradition of wearing coats on stage. Last year, Yom Kippur fell on September 30th. Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement, the Day of Forgiveness for Jews. It's observed by fasting for 24 hours, food and water, praying, hitting yourself in the chest, generally feeling like you're a schmuck. That's an important part. And so I am not a necessarily observant Jew. By way of example, the last meal I had before Yom Kippur was a cheeseburger from Five Guys. But then I was all for it. I was going for it, but instead of going to synagogue and instead of beating my chest and praying, I was on my way to the March for Racial Justice in D.C. I had been picked up as a marshal, which basically just means the people who are marching, I'm making sure they're going the right direction. If they have questions, I answer it, things like that. And above all this, I realized about halfway to DC that I have a very serious heart condition that I've had for years. It's not so much I realized it, I knew it, but I admitted it to myself. And I realized that marching probably wasn't the very best idea of something to do while you're starving yourself on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. But you know, I'm already on my way. So I get to DC, I get my little vest, I meet up with the rest of the crew, and I tell them, just so you know, this is falling on Yom Kippur. I'm already about 12 hours in to not having any kind of sustenance. I'm already a little loopy. So whatever easy role you can give me, I'll take that role. If it's just like doing this motion for 6 hours, that's well within the scope of what I can do. It's pretty close to beating your chest, but not quite. And they say, sure, no problem, we can match that. And then a call goes out that there is a marcher who needs support, who is differently abled. It's a person in a wheelchair. And they need somebody to push him for the length of the march. And God help me, no idea what was going on, but I said, yeah, I can do that. I'm a young guy with a heart condition who's starving. And so I do it. I go up to the very front, and by this time, the March for Black Women has joined this march. And the person that I'm helping is a 70-year-old gentleman who just goes by the Reverend, and he is going to be one of the leaders of the march. He's going to be one of the banner carriers for the March for Black Women. And I say, sure, I can do this. I can totally do this. This isn't a bad idea. I'm paired up with a guy named Salah, who is, if you're familiar with The Princess Bride, he's the Fezzik to my Vasily. And a very strong guy, and like so much energy. And I say, okay, great. I have ADA training. I will, talk to the good Reverend about going through this, and you can just be the muscle. And he said, yes, I'm used to that. And I said, that's good. It's good. It's good that you're used to that. So we start the march, and it turns out that while he is very excited, he's very nervous of a fellow, and so I end up having to push, and he's just kind of clearing the way. And I'm surrounded by these very powerful, very driven black people who I realize, okay, so I'm Jewish, so there's persecution there. I don't know, World War II, if you've heard of it. But on top of that, we do have privilege, but it's kind of like car keys that you get from your parents when you're a teen. Like, you can have privilege, but just as long as you put it back within the allotted time and you don't do anything crazy. But I recognize that I have privilege, and but I'm walking around all these people who have very little privilege, if at all. But what I notice is they're telling me what to do, but not in a way that I'm getting grumpy about. They're like, move here, turn this way, stop. We're taking a photo op here, and I'm like, oh, yep, you don't need a white Jewish kid who's starving in the front of that picture. I'll step back. Unfortunately, I'm so small that really it's just one person back, and I'm gone. And then at one point, there's a die-in, and the die-in is where everybody lays down. And the good Reverend wants to lay down with everybody else. And my heart is strangely quiet in a very nervous way, not like a holy way. And I say, well, this is part of it. And so I pick him up, and he's a light fellow, but like 90 pounds, which isn't, I guess, that light. And I put him on the ground, and I move out of the way, and I feel something that's it's either holiness or it's a complete lack of blood sugar, but I feel like I am not of myself. I feel like I am just a device for what's happening, and it's amazing. And I'm not hungry and I'm not thirsty, and I'm watching the scene roll out in front of me. And it ends, and I have to pick up this gentleman. And putting somebody down out of a wheelchair is pretty easy. Picking somebody up off the ground when you are a tubby Jewish kid is very tough. So I start doing it, and I'm struggling. And suddenly there are dozens of hands around me, without question, helping me load this person into this wheelchair. And that feeling that I felt before is amplified a million times. And I realize that I am absolutely acting out what Yom Kippur is, which is finding forgiveness through the service that you can do for people who don't have the opportunity to find that forgiveness. And we move out through the rest of the march, and I finally end up going to a restaurant and getting Chinese food, which is the Jewish custom. And that's my story of forgiveness. Thank you. Thanks, guys.